U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he may impose tariffs on cars and auto parts imported from the European Union if Washington is unable to make a trade deal with Brussels. The comments came during a meeting with Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz on Wednesday at the White House. "We are negotiating with them. If we don't make the deal, we will do the tariffs," Trump told reporters. "The EU has been very difficult over a period of time, over many years." Trump is currently reviewing a report from the U.S. Department of Commerce on whether or not imported vehicles and parts pose a threat to U.S. national security. The department's findings have not yet been made public. The European Union is the U.S. largest export market, accounting for about one-fifth of all U.S. exports. Similarly, one-fifth of EU exports go to the United States. EU-US trade in goods and services was €1,069.3 billion in 2017. The EU imported €256.2 billion in goods from the US, and exported €375.8 billion. The main exports and imports between the EU and US fall into the categories of machinery and vehicles, chemicals and other manufactured goods. Combined, they accounted for 89% of EU exports and imports with the US in 2017. In all three categories, as well as food and drink, the EU had a trade surplus. The US had a trade surplus in raw materials and energy. At €167 billion, machinery and vehicles were the largest EU export category to the US, accounting for 44.4% of goods exports. The €111.5 billion in machinery and transport equipment was the largest EU import from the US, accounting for 43.6% of imports. At the end of May 2018, the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on EU steel and 10% tariff on aluminum. Steel and aluminum exports to the United States were worth €3.58 billion in 2017. In response, the European Union developed a list of products it may subject to retaliatory tariffs. These include typical American products like peanut butter, bourbon whiskey, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, jeans and orange juice. The exports targeted by the EU are worth about €2.8 billion annually, according to EU officials. For services, the EU imports amounted to €219.3 billion and exports €218 billion. The top services were in professional and management services, intellectual property, travel, and education. About a third of EU-US trade consists of intra-company transfers. Author, Chase Winter attempt to de-escalate trade tensions. Kurz said he wanted to advance trade negotiations during his talks with the U.S. leader and to ensure that the trade war between the EU and the U.S. does not gain momentum. Austria's suppliers to German carmakers would likely suffer greatly from the tariffs, a fate Kurz is hoping to avoid. "As a small country, we need international cooperation," he said. Although Trump said the U.S. and Austria have a great trade relationship, he criticized the U.S. trade deficit with the EU, saying that Brussels is very tough to make a deal with. The two leaders did not appear to see eye to eye on trade, but Kurz praised Trump's pro-Israel stance, his diplomacy with North Korea as well as his pressure on European NATO members to increase military spending. Trump, in turn, praised Austria as a beautiful country and joked with Kurz about his age, telling the 32-year-old that he is a very young guy. Read more. No more BMWs or Mercs on Fifth Avenue. Tariff threat. Trump has threatened to levy tariffs on car imports from the EU in a bid to pressure the 28-member bloc to grant better access for U.S. products. The U.S. imported $340 billion €300 billion in cars, trucks and auto parts in 2017. Although U.S. carmakers would benefit from the import tax on their European competitors, the move would also likely put their businesses at risk. Many U.S. carmakers depend on imported parts that would be subject to Trump's tariffs, making them more expensive. The companies could also be subject to retaliatory tariffs, as well. The Trump administration has already imposed tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, as well as hundreds of Chinese products. RS, CMK, AP, DPA. Each evening at 18:30 UTC, DW's editors send out a selection of the day's hard news and quality feature journalism. You can sign up to receive it directly here.